So today we're going to take a grand tour of India's river systems. Now, these are so much more than just lines on a map. You got to think of them as the nation's lifelines. They've shaped everything, the geography, the history, and you know what? They're going to shape its future too. So let's start this journey from the incredible Himalayas all the way down to the ancient southern plateau.
And what a story it is. I mean, it's pretty dramatic when you think about it. These rivers have carved right through mountains, they've created these huge fertile plains, and they sustain literally hundreds of millions of people. They really are the pulse of the subcontinent.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this story, we first need to understand the basic geography that's pulling all the strings. See, India's landscape creates two very different groups of rivers, and each group has its own unique personality.
First up, we need to get a key term down, the drainage basin. The easiest way to think of it is like a giant funnel. Every single drop of rain that falls inside that area, it eventually finds its way into one single main river.
And what separates these giant funnels? Well, that's a water divide. This is basically any high ground, a mountain range, a plateau, that acts like the peak of a roof. It forces water to flow down one side or the other. And it's these divides that give India its two major river families.
So here's the bottom line. On one side, you have the Himalayan rivers. They're born from glaciers and melting snow, which means they're perennial. They flow all year round. But then on the other side, you've got the peninsular rivers in the south. They're only fed by rain, so they're seasonal. This one single difference in their source, it dictates everything about them, from how long they are to their entire character.
All right, let's kick off our tour way up north with the real giants of the system. The Himalayan river system is absolutely dominated by three legendary rivers, the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra.
Our first stop is the mighty Indus. Now, this river rises up in Tibet, near the sacred lake Mansarawar. And from there, it begins this absolutely epic journey, flowing west and carving its path into India through Ladakh.
And the scale here is just immense. We're talking 2,900 kilometers. That makes the Indus one of the longest rivers on the entire planet. But a really crucial detail here is the Indus Water Treaty from 1960. It's this incredible piece of international diplomacy that figures out how to share these vital waters, and it allows India to use just 20% of the river's total flow.
Let's move on to probably India's most iconic river, the Ganga. Now, it doesn't just bubble up as one little stream. No, it's born right here, at a place called Devaprayag, where two powerful headwaters, the Bhagirathi and the Alaknanda, merge in this absolutely stunning confluence.
So the Ganga gets its water from the Gangotri Glacier and then flows for over 2,500 kilometers. The really interesting part is when it leaves the mountains and hits the flat plains. Its slope becomes incredibly gentle, which is why it starts to form these huge, winding meanders. And this all ends in the Sundarban Delta, a massive, constantly growing landform that it builds together with the Brahmaputra.
And this little fact just illustrates that point perfectly. For every 6 kilometers the Ganga travels across the plains, its elevation drops by just 1 meter. Think about that. It's an almost flat journey, which gives the water all the time in the world to curve and carve its lazy path.
Our final Himalayan giant is the Brahmaputra, and what's wild is that it actually starts very close to where the Indus begins, up in Tibet. There, it's called the Tsangpo. But, unlike the Indus, it flows east, running parallel to the Himalayas on a completely different journey.
You know, the Brahmaputra is really a river of two personalities. In the cold, dry climate of Tibet, it's a pretty calm river, doesn't carry a lot of water. But then it takes this dramatic U-turn, slams into India, and runs straight into a high rainfall region, and it just transforms. It picks up huge volumes of water and silt, which leads to the devastating floods that Assam faces almost every single year.
Okay, let's head south now, down to the ancient Deccan Plateau. This is home to India's second family of rivers, the older, rain-fed, seasonal lifelines of the peninsula. They're a whole different ballgame.
Down here, the main water divide is the Western Ghats mountain range. Most of the major rivers, like the Godavari and the Krishna, they flow east across these wide, gentle plains all the way to the Bay of Bengal, and they drop off silt to form large deltas. But there are two major exceptions, the Narmada and the Tapi. They actually flow west, down a much steeper, narrower path to the Arabian Sea, carving out deep estuaries instead of building those deltas. Let's do a quick lightning tour. The Godavari, that's the giant of the south, so large it's often called the Dakshin Ganga or the Ganga of the south. The Narmada and Tapi are super unique because they flow through these things called rift valleys, which are basically channels created by cracks in the earth. And then there's the Kaveri, which creates the spectacular Shivasamudram Falls, a major source of hydroelectric power.
So we've seen all the geography, the different paths, the different sources, but why does any of this really matter? Well, because for thousands of years, these rivers have been the absolute bedrock of India's economy and its civilization.
I mean, the water from these rivers is a basic, fundamental natural resource. From ancient times, people have settled on their banks. They are absolutely essential for irrigation, which supports the livelihood of most of the population. And today, they are vital for generating hydroelectric power and for navigation. They are, quite simply, indispensable.
And that fundamental importance, it leads to a really critical modern-day question. With so much riding on them, what happens when the very health of these rivers comes under threat?
And believe me, they are under immense pressure. The very same development that these rivers make possible is now threatening their existence through pollution. It's a tough irony.
And the process is this really vicious cycle. So step 1, rising demand for water for cities, for farms, for factories. It just reduces the river's volume. Then step 2, a heavy load of untreated waste and industrial chemicals gets dumped into that smaller amount of water. This combo just completely overwhelms the river's natural ability to clean itself, turning a flowing lifeline into a polluted channel.
Now, the concern over this pollution isn't exactly new. Action plans have been around for decades, starting way back in 1985 with the Ganga Action Plan. That later got expanded into the National River Conservation Plan. And more recently, the Namame Gange program was launched as a huge flagship mission to try and rejuvenate the Ganga.
And if you're wondering why this is all so urgent, this number says it all. 97% of the water on Earth is salt water. Of that tiny 3% that's fresh, most of it is locked away in ice caps and glaciers. So these flowing rivers, they are an unbelievably precious and finite resource.
Which leaves us with this one last thought. For thousands of years, these rivers have been the foundation of life in India. The great challenge of our time, of the 21st century, is to make sure they can continue to be the foundation for its future.